This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Brewers Outlet, and Purdy Insurance. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour being brought to you by our good friends at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews. The best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. Ready to drink cocktails. High Noon, Jack Daniels, Crown Royal. And the pickle bar led by the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Well, we're bringing back Donnie Collins. And Donnie talked about this last week, and you had a couple of hints in there as to if it didn't go well, what could happen, and it did. How have you reacted to seeing how the last 48 hours has played out?
It's stunning to me, Steve. If you told me 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, that James wouldn't have a job, and by the middle of October, I'd have bet my house against that, and I'd be homeless right now. And it's just one of those things that I don't think I ever pictured it coming, because I didn't picture them losing the game. How do you go out there and a game that you're the more talented team in with everything on the line and not improve on the 2 losses and kind of go out and struggle again in the first half and all that, and a lot of things that I thought would happen in that game didn't, and it led to a lot of things after the game and in the day after the game that you can't picture happening a month ago. It's just been a fascinating kind of free fall at Penn State, and if I have no explanations for it, no theories, nothing. I don't really understand how all of this happened and why it's gotten to this point, but it certainly has.
The funny thing is, Donnie, that's exactly how in the first part of the show. I said, look, I apologize to the audience. I mean, normally I have a pretty good handle on why or why not, and I can explain it.
Yeah.
I mean, Donnie, I really can't explain it. I mean, I keep looking at it, and I have no answers. I don't know.
I think just kind of looking at it from the overhead perspective, I think if there's something I could look at and say, what happened that you didn't expect would happen? Number one, it's everything. But number two is I think we overrated the defense a little bit. I think I'm willing to look at the depth of what they had coming back this year and say that they didn't have the depth it took to compete for a championship on defense. That they really missed a guy like Abdul Carter. There's that kind of consistent explosion isn't there. You see, Chop Robinson a couple of years ago, but they replaced him with Abdul, and there's really been no. I think Benida the Sutton, I said last week, has played well, but not in a dominant fashion against these types of teams. So I think you look at it from that perspective. You say defense hasn't been great, so that's why you're looking at that's why you're looking at this as kind of an abject failure of a season. But there's no excuse for the offense. I have no. The offensive line's been shoddy. The quarterback play has been uneven. The running backs, Nick Singleton hasn't given them anything. The receivers have been okay, not game-breaking, outside of a couple of moments from Ross. And the tight ends have clearly not recovered from losing Tyler Warren. But I can't look at the offense and say I expected any of this because there's no reason to. They were a veteran group. They're a talented group at positions where they lost veteran guys. So it's kind of I think that the only explanation I could have is we overrated them on defense a little bit. But everything else I don't any real answers for anybody. It's kind of puzzling, and it's really one of the great mysteries of my time being around the program, which has gone on for a long time now.
What I find interesting is that, I mean, statistically, and I pointed this out earlier, you have to take out the interception by Dennis Sutton because that was a 2-point conversion, so statistically it doesn't count, except being a 2-point conversion that was no good. They haven't had a takeaway, Donnie, in the last 3 games, which, like, for a Penn State defense, you sit back and go, that's really a shocking number.
Yeah, they don't do anything that you're used to them doing, and they don't do anything that a veteran team does. I said last week they're only okay. They're in the 8-minute in those middle 8 minutes that James always talked about. They're only okay. They're giving up points there where they haven't in the past. They're not making big splash plays on offense consistently enough. I mean, if at all, they're not trying to push the ball down the field. And I'm not saying chuck it deep. I'm not doing it, but it's got to work within the parameters of the offense because they had a quarterback who could deliver that ball. They had some receivers that you can go get it. They're just. Yeah, they just don't do any. They haven't made those steps toward getting over the top from last year that you would expect a veteran team to make. And I keep coming back to that in my mind, a veteran team. They didn't play like it. They played like a team that was young and capable but not experienced enough. And these guys kind of in the moment haven't lived up to it. And once that moment passed them against Oregon, they never recovered. And it's just that's kind of the mentality. And Terry Smith kind of commented on the grittiness, the toughness, multiple times during his press conference today that this team didn't have. And I'm just kind of surprised because I thought it was a given. I thought they had it. I thought we saw it a little bit last year, and it just was never there.
Yeah, that's what's been the shock about it. These are all the guys that were important parts of getting Penn State to its first ever national semifinal game. How tough was it to see how Drew Aller's career at Penn State end?
Yeah, that's brutal. And you don't want to see any player go out that way. But it's hard with Drew because as somebody who covered Drew for a lot of years there, he's not a kid who this didn't mean anything to. He wasn't a kid who ever looked at the NFL and said, "That's where I'm going. I'm going to be there, and whatever happens here is just kind of leading me there." Playing at Penn State meant something to Drew. Winning at Penn State meant something to Drew. We saw it in his comments last week before the game. I don't remember what it was. I'm in the last building from 6 a.m. to 8:30 or whatever it is, 8:30 at night, and it's you don't want to see that happen to him. And I'll say this about him: I think he's a better player than he ever got credit for. I really think he did whatever they asked of him offensively. He played for a bunch of different coordinators. And I'm not sure any of the offenses were really his strength. I don't think any of them asked him to do what he really does best, and he battled through it in an age where you could leave, where you could go take NIL money elsewhere, where you can go to the NFL. He stayed. He stuck it out, and to see him not get what he deserved out of this, to me, is it's kind of a. It kind of got lost in the big stories of the weekend, but to me, that's as sad as anything that's happened for Penn State this year. Is that he goes out in this manner, and he's going to live with that. He's going to take it hard. I know he's going to take that hard. He's a great kid. I think he's going to be a really good NFL quarterback. I know a lot of the fans question what he really the feel he really has for the position. But I don't. I think he's going to be really good. I think somebody's going to get a steal there, whatever round they get him in. And I think it's a shame that it didn't happen for him at Penn State.
Yeah, he will be a steal for somebody, believe me. He's the kind of guy they're going to love him in the locker room. They're going to love his attitude, his work ethic, and he's going to be able to do some things. Now, that also now means the door is open for Ethan Krunkemeyer, of which I'd say even the most knowledgeable fan knows very little about. How interested are you to see him in, of all things, he's got an interim head coach. He's going into Kinnick Stadium. It's going to transition from late afternoon to night. How interested are you to see him in this?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting things going on here with Grunkemeyer. Number one is the staff, because you get these interim staffs in, and you immediately start to see what everybody would do if they had been calling plays or they had been in charge. So we'll see what Terry Smith thinks of Ian Grunkemeyer pretty quick. But and Terry's going to have a good opinion of that because he sees him in practice all the time. And he's a guy who's trying to do his best to give Grunkemeyer good looks and develop him from that perspective. So now he's got a whole different perspective on it. So we'll see what he thinks he can do. But I think one thing fans kind of lose here is that they don't put these guys in and let them go and see what they can do. They put them in there and ask them to run the system. And I think there's a case to be made here that the system might be a little better for a guy like Grunkemeyer. I mean, he runs a little bit. From what we're told, you're right. We haven't seen very much from him. It's basically one try from the, I think Phanatic game. But yeah, I think it'll be very interesting because the last time Penn State went in to Iowa and had to use the backup quarterback, it didn't go so well. So that's a very, very difficult place to play for any players. Never mind someone making his first start. But this is we're going to find out a lot about the kid, whether he has some moxie to him, whether he's got some gumption, because this is a big moment for him. Because you look at it, he's auditioning for next year. There's going to be a new head coach. There's going to be a whole, maybe a new offense in there, and there's plenty of quarterbacks going to be hitting the market. So we're going to see if the guy could show that he could keep the job. I think that would be the hope for Penn State, is that he shows them something. But this is a tough place to start showing that. It's a really, really difficult environment.
And by the way, there is an Iowa kid on the roster, a quarterback. That's Jackson Smolik. I'm not saying it's not out of the realm of possibility we see a little bit of him. You don't know. What about Terry Smith and how he handled his part of the press conference today? Because he had to get up there as the interim head coach and make a transition from somebody in James Franklin he deeply cares about to then talking about a football team and a program he deeply cares about.
Yeah, I really thought – I was really impressed with Terry. And it's kind of unfair to say that because I knew I would be, because he's one of the great guys, really, really tremendous Penn State guy. It means something to him to be there. Obviously, he's been there his whole life pretty much. So, yeah, he owes a lot to Penn State. He knows that, and he's trying to give back. So I was interested to see how he'd handle it. And, given his close relationship with James, and he got emotional over it during the press conference, but he pulled no punches. He made sure everybody knew, hey, this team needs a toughness and a grittiness and a swag that it hasn't had all year. And we'll see if he can give that back to them. What gives it back to you is winning. So you go out and win a game, and you'll have all that back and all that confidence you lost. But I really thought, going into those two press conferences, the news of the day was going to be what Pat Kraft said, but the story of the program was going to be what Terry Smith said, and he was really open about a lot of things. The team's relationship with James. He was asked about keeping the class together, keeping the recruiting class together, and he basically said, "I got my job really cut out for me here. It's going to be very difficult." And I think that's one thing those things that he addressed are things that a lot of people don't look into. You get rid of your head coach, but now you have to really wonder what's going to happen to my staff, what's going to happen to my future, my recruiting class. The guys currently on the team, is this program going to look like it does currently in a few months? And the answer is probably not, but I think the confidence that they have in Terry Smith to keep it as close to what it is it's high, and it should be, because he's the guy that's, James is beloved in that locker room. Don't get me wrong, but so is Terry Smith. So we'll see if him being around kind of keeps the team together. It's at a critical point for the program, and I think he's the right guy for that.
Well, he is absolutely the right guy for it, and that's one thing. When Jack Ham and I take an opportunity, usually on Thursdays and Fridays, we usually try to make sure we've always made time to talk to Terry, because, to be honest with you, Terry doesn't pull punches. He's blunt. Yeah, if he thinks something's good, he'll tell you it's good. If he thinks something isn't quite right, he'll tell you it isn't right. Now, that's with us in private conversation. But, I mean, that's what the two of us have always respected. We always felt like we got the straight shot when we talked to him.
Yeah, I think a lot of us who've dealt with him over the years feel the same way. One thing he said today that I thought was kind of under the radar a little bit, but he said that
playing time is earned on the field.
Yes.
And he is one guy who did bench a guy for playing poorly during this stretch here. I mean, A.J. Harris didn't play very well. Came in with a lot of accolades, a lot of respect. A lot of the fans thought this was your lockdown corner for the year and on the way to the national championship. He benched him on Saturday. I think that's putting your money where your mouth is, and that's going to be I think there's some accountability to be had now under the Terry Smith regime here for a lot of these players who now have to go out and earn it, and I think that's a good thing at this point in time for Penn State, because if you're not going to go and fight, the time to fight was last week and the week before. The time to fight is past, but now for this season, but the fight for the future is starting now, and if I feel like that Terry Smith could go into this saying things like that and having something to back it up, because it can't be easy to pinch A.J. Harris. It just can't be. He's a good player.
Yeah. But Terry will do that. Now, it helps that he has Elliott Washington and Davian Collins, but he can do that.
Terry benching a starter is different than Dan Connor benching a starter.
Yes, there's no question. Which then brings me to a comment that you made about what Terry discussed, and that's toughness up front on both sides. I felt that was a very revealing comment as to how he evaluated things.
Yeah, and it's a very accurate comment from what I think we've all seen. They never established themselves as a dominant team in the trenches. Now, we could, as I kind of hinted at earlier, we could debate whether that's possible on the defensive line, whether they could dominate opponents. They're not great up the middle. That's something Bob Shoop always talked about when I would talk to him, and Manny was the same way. Got to be strong up the middle on defense. They're not as strong up the middle as they have been, especially without Rojas.
So I do wonder if the defensive line is going to be dominant. The offensive line can be dominant, and that's going to be a real litmus test for this program moving forward. Could he get the most out of what this offensive line was supposed to be? But yeah, sometimes it's not surprising what is said, but that is said, and I don't want to call it surprising because it's true, but to hear the interim coach come in and have a 20-minute press conference and go really early on the toughness and grit and kind of put it on both the lines is very telling, and it's why Penn State's in the position it's in right now, and they need to fix that really quick. And I think he's the guy who's going to come in and you're going to at least see effort guys out there.
And that's the bottom line. Because if James was not around, like if he had to make a recruiting trip or something, it was actually always Terry that he would say, okay, you run this, this, and this. So the players already knew that ahead of time. But they're at least putting somebody in place that is universally respected in the locker room right out of the jump. And that's what Terry has. He's got that kind of cachet.
Yeah, he might be the most respected former Penn State player in the program. Or around the program, and it's been that way for a very long time. And I think among current players, former players, there don't meet anybody who has a bad word to say about Terry Smith or the way he approaches football and Penn State. So yeah, I agree with that. And I think the power of you got your coach fired is a real motivating factor right now, and Terry's got that hammer. And he should wield it, and I think he plans to.
Donnie, absolute pleasure as always. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time and your analysis.
Thanks, Steve. Talk to you soon.
Donnie Collins joining us on the show today in this half hour, being brought to you by Brewers Outlet. Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews. The best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and hot every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. And ready-to-drink cocktails. High Noon, Jack Daniels, Crown Royal. Pickle bar led by the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
Attention, Central Pennsylvania truck buyers. This is the sale you've been waiting for. Sunbury Motors Ford's 100th annual October New Truck Sale. Choose from 3 city blocks of new Ford trucks with savings up to $10,216 and financing as low as 0.9%. Pick from 17 Ford Mavericks, including hybrid all-wheel drives that get up to 40 miles per gallon and start at just $31,890. SMC has 10 new 2025 Ford Rangers, discounted up to $6,000, priced from $39,725. Sunbury Motors has over 60 new Ford F-150s, including STX, XLT, Lariats, and King Ranch trucks in stock for immediate delivery. SMC has slashed all F-150s with savings up to $10,000, and they're priced from only $43,944. Sunbury Motors Ford in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, proudly owned by the Mertz family for over a century. Hurry before someone gets your new truck. And as Jeff Clark always says,
SMC is where you want to be for your next new Ford F-150.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory. Great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. They go over every vehicle. With pre-owned inventory, you're always hoping for it. I want to make sure. They make sure for you. It eases the buying experience. And a terrific service department, quick lane inspections, routine, difficult. They handle it all. It's Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ray Dunne, 97.5 The Phanatic in Philadelphia, joins us on the show now. Ray, absolute pleasure. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get a chance to talk with you today.
Sounds great, Ray. Let's start with this. Obviously, Penn State's going to be a big deal anywhere in the state, including down there. What's the reaction to the move with James Franklin?
I mean, I can't say it's any different than I think a lot of the reaction across the country. I think there's the initial of, wow, that happened, and then the, well, you got to give credit for what he was able to do with the situation he came into, where he's built the program to. But there's definitely a lot of, I would say, uneasy, anxious alumni around here that were ready to see a change, that now that the change has happened, we're surprised it happened as quickly as it did. But I think there was definitely a sentiment today that we got that people were ready for a change. I just don't think they anticipated. They gave notification yesterday that change was happening.
I think there's some people that I think thought maybe the bye week, but Pat Kraft decided to make the move now. Okay, so now let's get to the Eagles and the Phillies. I'll start with the Phillies because we'll do elimination in chronological order here. They obviously get into everybody knew was going to be a tough series with the Dodgers. And I said this back in July, Ray. My issue with the Phillies is this. I love the home run, like anybody, because I equated that to the Yankees, who got 51% of their runs from home runs. I said, but there are going to be certain times in the postseason you're going to have to manufacture something, and I always felt that was a weakness of this team. Am I right or wrong about that?
Yeah, I think it's not the most fundamentally sound baseball team. And I think in terms of manufacturing things, you look at a team like the Brewers that are still playing, that's their bread and butter. That's why they're still playing right now. With the talent the Phillies have, you would think a lot of times you're going to be able to out-talent your way through a postseason. That's why I think the last two prior to this playoff disappointment sticks out to me, because I go back to 23 to 24. You had more talent. It's just a matter of you being tighter as a team. I don't think you played up to your potential in either that Diamondbacks or that Mets series. This time, it's tough to out-talent a team that is probably more talented than you. And I think when you rely on that as a little bit your identity, and that goes back to the home runs, bashing the ball, I think that's where you come up short. So your estimation of that one where you're saying, yeah, part of it's that they can't manufacture it, that hasn't been their identity. So I agree with you in that sense. They just ran into a team that was able to kind of beat them at their own game just a little bit better.
But they also could not do what other teams did this year. They could not get to the Dodger bullpen, which is the underbelly, really, of this team. The Dodger bullpen did fine. Now, taking a former starter, Sasaki, and making him into a closer, it's one thing. But they could not penetrate the underbelly.
Yeah, they couldn't do that. And one of the things that sticks out neon to me about the end of that game, McCurkering throwing the ball away, is not just that mistake, but you look at Trinan getting up in the bullpen and what was due up for the Phillies. And you're like, maybe finally in this game they're going to get something going offensively. We'll never know. But, yeah, they weren't able to penetrate that bullpen. And kind of credit to what they were able to do in getting Glasnow in there in Game 1 to stave off any of that bullpen. You look at this 5-game series, the way it was set up, and traditionally you'd think, hey, a team as talented as the Dodgers, you'd rather get them in the short series, because if you get them in the short series, anything can happen. In retrospect, looking at this, getting them in a 5-game series where there's off days between 1 and 2, and then obviously the travel day to go 2 to 3, it gives you an opportunity to get more creative with your arms, and it probably gave them a chance to hide some of the flaws of that bullpen, because the Phillies were able to hit it a bit, but just not enough. They didn't get nearly anything against the starting pitching, and then when it gets to the bullpen, they're able to use quality starters instead of a bullpen that was bad for a lot of the end of the season. The reason why the Dodgers didn't really run away with their division and didn't run away with anything in terms of one of the buys in the National League.
Yeah, and that's a part of it. There's no question. But I keep looking at the line. Look, I thought they didn't really do a lot in the offseason last year, but when it came time to make acquisitions, getting Harrison Bader and getting Duran helped. It didn't help that Bader then got hurt. Right. And I felt that set them back a little bit when Bader got hurt. Is he a star? No. But at this time of the year, good players make you better. And they lost a good player there who couldn't give them every inning, every day.
And you're so right just about, he's not necessarily a star, but look at this team when they've won series of the postseason the last couple of years. I'll always go back in 22 to Rhys Hoskins, the numbers, some of them don't look as great as you remember them, but right-handed pop. That NLDS against the Braves in 23, Nick Castellanos, right-handed pop. They needed right-handed pop in this lineup. You decided, hey, Trey Turner, we don't want you to sell out for the home run ball, which him selling out for anything, in games 1, 2, and 4 would have been nice. Just any more production from him in that top 3 of the lineup would have been great. But not to just pick on him, you need right-handed pop to succeed. That's what they've been missing. And Bader gave you that late in the season. To lose him in this series loses a key element of what they've had, what's been a part of their winning formula in series in the postseason. So you're right on top of that, and that makes your defense so difficult. I mean, just so difficult. It made the situation with pinch running Castellanos in Game 2 so difficult. Yeah. It made construction in Game 4 in terms of who you're pinch hitting, when you're pinch hitting, what you're looking for there. It makes it so much tougher not to have a guy like Harrison Bader who can lock down center field for you and play against anyone. It just made lineup construction and the way they went about things so much more difficult in this series after they lose him.
I'll say credit where credit's due. Zach Wheeler is one of the few pitchers in the game right now that can win 2 games in a short series. He's one of the very few who can do that. They lose him. Yet I felt their starting pitching, Sanchez, Luzardo, and then you can lump Nola and Ranger Suarez together. That was not an issue at all for them. I thought their starting pitching ended up being a big plus.
No, it ended up being tremendous in this series. For all that, we bellyached all season. Oh, what's the postseason rotation look like? I feel like a moron for having that conversation every week. I felt like on the air, like, what's it going to be? It didn't end up mattering because they got all 4 of those guys in there. They looked tremendous. The Nola Suarez lumping in that game 3 where you win might have been the decision that ended up saving Rob Thompson's job. When it comes down to it, they get swept. He's probably in a precarious spot right now. He'll be back in 26, and I think part of that's just the way they managed that pitching staff in that game that they needed to win.
Okay, needs list in the offseason. Go to the winter meetings. You go through the free agency part of it. How do you look at roster construction for the Phillies and what they may need or better yet, may not need to do in the offseason?
Yeah, you're going to start with just I need a different right-handed bat. I need to shake up this lineup. Bohm, Castellanos, you could pick your one of the 2 that they're going to move on from. I think they're going to move on from Castellanos. That seems all but certain to me at this point. So I think you're going to need another right-handed bat. I would prefer a little bit more pop. I know we're talking about the home runs. It's funny to say it, but more consistency. So I don't necessarily maybe need like the 30, 35 I'm selling out for home runs guy, but someone in the 20s that probably gives you, an OBP somewhere in, like the 340s and, looking at the market for something there, whether it be someone that plays third base, whether it's someone that plays a corner outfield spot. And I think whichever one you address, that other guy becomes expendable to your roster. I know that in Arizona, people have, pondered whether they move on from Tel Marte. If that's an option at second base, would that be something they could go down the path of? You just kind of need a new dynamic to that room and a new dynamic to that lineup. There's a lot of guys on this team that I particularly like that I want back. Schwarber, obviously, you want to have back. Harrison Bader, I enjoyed the addition here, but he's a 32-year-old who had a career year. He's going to command, quite a bit of money. And a 32-year-old playing center, how many more years do you get him in center? That's something you got to ask yourself. So Schwarber's one that he's still welcome back on my roster. Realmuto, with the way this pitching staff likes him, I think he's welcome back on my roster. That leaves you with a lot of, where do we make the changes here? And I think the changes have to start looking down at one of those right-handed bats, whether it's someone that plays third base, whether it's one that plays right field. And, again, I think it's going to be a change in right field. It's just about where you go from there. Bullpen arms, they're finicky year to year. You're going to want to address that bullpen again. I don't know if you can address it any worse than what you did with Romano last season. So that ends up being, I guess, can't get much worse than the way you addressed it last year. But after that, you don't need really a ton of help in the rotation spot of things. But I think the biggest thing for me is going to be adding a dynamic right-handed bat to this lineup. And can you at least make enough really serviceable moves to upgrade at the edges of what might be a second baseman, a corner outfielder, a center fielder? There's a lot on the table when your team fails back-to-back seasons.
Yeah, I did have to laugh because besides doing the play-by-play for Penn State football and Penn State basketball, I also do the play-by-play for the State College Spikes. And I was sitting there watching this Dodger series, and Harrison Bader played for the Spikes. Tyler Glasnow played for the Spikes. Tommy Edman played for the Spikes. I was sitting like going, it's like all these guys were here. It's like, okay.
That's sweet. Isn't that the best feeling, though, when it's like, oh, you remember those games, and then you can now point to them and say, oh, look at what they're doing in the big spot. That's like got to be the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, I mean, because I know Mike Schultz stepped down as the Padres manager. He was the Spikes third base coach. So it's like, like you know these people.
What news to drop today on that front? That was absurd. That the phrasing of that whole thing. I didn't think if I'm the Padres, I don't think it's necessarily on him for what happened. But then again, I work in Philadelphia, and I know the way people go looking at coaches all the time.
So that allows us to transition over to the Eagles. So let's do that. It's interesting to watch them play this year because I thought that their training camp, you tell me if I'm wrong, for a Super Bowl champion was pretty low-key and businesslike. And the opening 6 weeks haven't been like that.
No, there was a weird. I guess they wanted to kind of go with the whole like Men in Black memory loss thing for the entire fan base when we got to the start of the season, where they were like, we're not talking about last year. We're not talking about last year. We're not talking about last year. And I felt like the first time adversity came up, Sirianni jumped back to, well, you remember when last year we started like, and it's like, whoa. Hey, man, you told us that we weren't talking about last year, yet the first time you guys saw any bit of adversity in the game, even games you were winning, you went back and harkened back to last season. So what is it? What's the deal with talking about last year? And I think that plays into a little bit of the storylines that everyone's gotten into. Is it 2023 all over again? And we keep doing that conversation, and it's like, well, part of the problem post-2022 was just a tightness in that locker room and a feeling of we have to get back to that threshold. We have to get back to that level. And you made such a big deal about not acknowledging last year, then you start acknowledging last year. It's a weird kind of dynamic of the messaging coming out of that locker room that I don't necessarily love because we've seen that group specifically get tight following a season when they go to the Super Bowl and have high expectations. And does this team scream a little tight to you? Because it certainly does to me.
No, it does very much. And it's interesting because Jack Ham will kid me all the time about, Swan and Stallworth when he played with them, and and he'll say, "Oh, Steve, those wide receivers." Yet when you look at, let's go now today or recent years, I don't care whether it's at one point was a Moss or a Terrell Owens or now a George Pickens or now even an A.J. Brown, because they're so dependent on so many other people to get them the ball. They complain when they don't get the ball, and I think that then becomes a domino you have to overcome because you're trying to get somebody on track with how a team concept goes.
Yeah, he got praised, I think it was by Sirianni early in the season for a run block he made, and he basically said something to the effect of, I'm not in this for the participation aspect of this. Like, I'm a wide receiver, and I want a wide receiver to have that mentality, to want the football. But I think that gives you a little bit of an idea of how they feel inside that locker room with, hey, that ball has to get to us. We have to be a part of what we're doing here. He did the whole, I'm not fulfilled by the Super Bowl win. Well, he's fulfilled by getting his numbers. And part of the issue here is whatever happened between Hurts and Brown a couple of years ago, it's not that it's something they can't overcome because we saw them win a Super Bowl, but it's certainly something right now that's on the forefront of their relationship. You don't see them talking on the sideline, and you can just tell it's tense with the way that they have to acknowledge whether or not they had a meeting, a conversation. A.J. Brown saying, I don't recall a meeting, and then A.J. Brown's taken to Twitter. There's a tenseness about that dynamic that you would love just a 200-yard game for everyone to be like, yeah, see, things were great all along. Isn't that what you all wanted to see? Like, I feel like their relationship and this locker room needs that big game more than anything else.
I want to get up front for a moment. Because they have not run the ball as well as they did last year. And there's a little different dynamic up front. That's going to happen with offensive lines. How much is that playing into it? And at the same time, on the push play, they've now been offside, and they've been able to get away with it 4 different times. Right? Where I'm wondering if there are a couple of guys there that they're jumping the gun because they aren't confident in it, and that's why they're doing it. They've gotten away with it, but they've been offside 4 times. On it. What's your look at that offensive line right now?
Yeah, they've gotten away with it, but they've given the NFL the perfect excuse to ban it in the offseason. I mean, the difficult to officiate nature of it, I think, will be top of conversation. I'm already planning that show for March, April, coming up in 2026. So don't worry about it. I'm sure we're going to dive into that. But, yeah, I think that they are hurt right now. Landon Dickerson had knee surgery in August. I mean, that's a quick turnaround for him to be out there and playing. Cam Jurgens told Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer that he felt like he wasn't at 100%, then threw out the number of 60% there. Like, you have to play football sometimes at 60%. That's a weird number just to throw out of thin air. I think that's probably close to what he truly feels like he's playing, and that's the interior offensive line. And you remember a season ago, Saquon Barkley obviously is tremendous, but the big number that always stuck out was the yards before contact. If you give a player of his caliber, and I realize I'm speaking to a Penn State audience here. I don't think I really need to give this lecture on giving a player of his caliber that much space. But you give him that much space to operate, he's going to make guys miss. He's also going to run right by you. They haven't given him that space to operate, and that's been a big problem for them. It's crazy to say that Tyler Steen, the right guard, having his first year at that starting position, of those 3 guys in the interior, probably has been as good, if not better than those guys, because the other 2 guys are just banged up. And Lane Johnson's been in and out of the lineup. I mean, that's that's a big problem for this team in terms of getting that running game going if they want to have the same identity that they had as a team a year ago.
Right. That's really important for them because they actually, to this point, have been outscored this season. That's the weird part. I think they're, what are they, a -2 or something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, outscored, outgained. You want to go by any metric. This is a team at 4-2 that certainly in this town does not feel like a 4-2.
Yeah. So how have the fans reacted to 4-2? Look, what was interesting about the Giants game the other night is that in the second half, let's get back to the push play. To do it, you have to be 3rd down 2, maybe 3, but 3rd and 2, 4th and 2, 4th and 1, whatever. They never ran it once in the second half because they weren't in that situation one time. The Giants did a great job against them on 1st and 2nd down.
Yeah, and that's been a big problem, and it goes kind of to the offensive design right now. They're not getting enough. They are just not getting enough on 1st and 2nd down. Part of it is, I think, early in the season, they were going into that showcase Saquon-type offense, and offensive line wasn't allowed to happen. Also, it was just a predictable look. You know, based on the formation you're getting for the Eagles, you can usually tell, hey, when they're going to run, when they're going to pass, and that's not great. And they get behind the 8 ball in some of these downs, and then they're forced to air it out in what has been inconsistent passing game. I thought Thursday night was the first time this season where I look at it and say, hey, look, to me, that's a Jalen Hurts loss for you right there. That's one where I know the offense hasn't been good certain halves this season, but that game specifically, in that second half, you're down 10, you're going down the field, and Hurts throws the interception. Well, now you're really in a bad spot. They turn the ball over again. Those are things that aren't characteristic of what's been winning for the Eagles. Protecting the football, taking care of the football, and for them a season ago was taking care of your business early on downs. They haven't done it. Their offense, if you look at the second half of games, the second half that stuck out the most to you was the Rams game. What happened in that game was basically, well, we just have to air it out. I mean, they had to make an adjustment because they were down so much. In games they've been outworked and outcoached, really, in terms of adjustments offensively. They've been really worked in those second halves.
And look, I know winning's exponentially more fun, but the Giants look like a team that was having fun playing the game, and the Eagles did not look like they had fun playing the game the other night. That's another part to it as well.
They looked like someone at work at noon on a Friday that just keeps checking the watch because they're going to the shore for the weekend or something. Like they looked like a team all right, when's this thing going to be over? Or when can I clock out? I mean, that's the way it felt in that second half. And for me, it was when can I clock out of this night of Philly sports? Because I was by the time I watched that second half, I was about done, mentally spent with the efforts that I got put forth.
Ray, absolute pleasure. Thanks so much. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, that's Ray Dunne joining us from 97.5 The Phanatic in Philadelphia. Half hour brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia. Routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf and online at sunburymotors.com here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.